There's a lot of opportunities for brokers to reach out and build income through a wireless expert like ourselves, where they hand off their client over to us. We assist them with the cell lease, and then they can assist them with all of their commercial real estate needs.
NAI Global presents How's Biz.
Greetings and welcome to NAI Global's How's Biz podcast. I'm your host, Gary Marsh. Today's guest is Amber Brandhagen. She's a principal and partner and chief operating officer of NAI Global Wireless, which for listeners that aren't really familiar, the company does have a few specialization type members, if you will, and certainly NAI Global Wireless is one of them, as it implies. Amber's business and her business partner, David Moore, they have a lot to do with your cell phone reception. So whenever you say, I can't hear you, just start thinking about Amber and David. But seriously, why don't we start, Amber, with first of all, welcome. Thanks for joining us and welcome to the podcast.
No, thank you for having me. Yeah, so NAI Global Wireless, we specialize in wireless landlord representation across the United States. We assist property owners with their cell lease assets, whether that's a new lease agreement, a lease amendment, buyouts, or evaluations. We also do some brick and mortar transactions with our legacy clients, as well as some property management.
So when you say brick and mortar, Amber, does that mean a retail store for the vendor or merchant?
Yeah, it's usually an industrial building. David, was in real estate for 45 years. So it's a lot of his clients that he has those relationships with that we still assist.
Gotcha. And then back to the wireless and the core business. When you say landlord, I'm thinking a person, I've heard of example of churches with a little extra land looking for revenue. You put a tower on it. I'm thinking of farmers that have ample amounts of land, but the area doesn't have good reception. They put a tower. Is this the kind of business arrangement you help clients with?
Yes, absolutely. So cell lease infrastructure can be on any asset class. So it could be on a church in a steeple. It can be in a flagpole in the back of an industrial property, any asset class, anywhere USA, as long as there's no reception.
Gotcha. So you represent the property owner, and then do you basically have speed dial, for Xfinity, all the different mobile carriers, and then you and David go to work to identify which one of those might like to lease this spot? Is that how it works?
Not necessarily. What happens is the carriers send out radio frequency engineers, and they locate a specific area. And what they do is they send out proposals to property owners within that little area and see who is interested. Once that letter of intent is out, those property owners will either contact us directly, or they reach out to their brokers and say, hey, do you know somebody that understands cell leases? We get brought in once that property owner is already contacted, and we reach out. It's usually through third-party consultants through those carriers, and we reach out to those reps and start negotiations.
Oh, that's a perfect segue, because again, the podcast is called How's Biz. One of the main premises of NAI Global is to refer business, receive referrals, inbound, outbound revenue that, it's almost just like a little gift that shows up. So for again, listeners, many of which are brokers, these are women and men that could get a call from a property owner, say, hey, I got this outreach from this third-party operator representing some sort of cell phone operator. They won't probably disclose the name of the company. We don't know anything about this, but our NAI people call you and David and say help, and they basically get a referral fee.
Absolutely. Yes. Actually, about 80% of our book of business comes from referrals within NAI.
Oh, good. Well, the more the reason why we're getting into detail about your process and your business. Well, nothing like an example. Maybe you can give us, the listeners, a recent example of a deal that you guys closed and, without drilling down into detail, I'm sure some of these stories could go 5-10 minutes, but as briefly as you can, what's kind of a recent transaction you guys completed on behalf of a cell phone property owner, and whether or not it included an AI professional?
Yeah. So there's one that is very interesting, and it was a one-off situation. And it was with a tower company and a landlord. They were at odds with one another, and the tower company wanted to relocate the infrastructure. We were brought in by a broker to assist their client to mediate and arbitrate the transaction, stopping that relocation. And our client received over $2.5 million. So with us getting involved, we saved, that client and was able to get them 2.5 million. The significance of the transaction was that the tower company was committed to spending millions on relocating. They were done. They wanted to get off of that property. And due to the size of this transaction, we had to go to the head of US operations and get them to approve the economics for a lease buyout. I think for this particular situation, I wanted to bring it up because I hear all the time that my tower will never go away, right? So tower companies and carriers will relocate a tower.
Okay, that's a great example. Thanks for sharing. Without getting specific on the fees, is it how are they structured? Because most leases are pretty straightforward. Sales are usually straightforward. There's always back and forth with both for a brokerage or fee or commission. How are they structured with NEI Global Wireless?
So we charge same as a typical brokerage fee. So if we are doing a sale, we will do 6% of the gross. If it's a lease amendment, we are doing 6% of the gross rents of the first 5 years. And then for a new build, a new sell lease agreement, it's 6% of the first 5 and then 3% of the second 5. And then we have a la carte of services as well. So we provide kind of like a BOV, a broker's opinion of value, but it's an evaluation on a sell lease, and we charge flat fees for those.
Got it. Well, I know, again, our listeners are really good with doing math in their head, so that helps them start thinking about how they could call you guys up and generate some more business for everybody. Speaking of which, generally speaking, because of the shakiness of the economy and et cetera, transaction volumes are down in most markets. How is not downturn? I don't think we're in a downturn yet, but the softness of the market of 2023, how's that impacted your business?
We've seen a decrease in volume, but we've definitely seen an increase in property owners looking to sell their assets. So with the Fed increasing interest rates and the election around the corner, we are going to see the buyers retreating on prices. When I started in the industry, buyers were paying 135 times the monthly rent. We are now up to 250 times the monthly rent, and that's just not sustainable. So we believe, and then less than a year from now, we are not going to be seeing these prices anymore.
Got it. Are there any U.S. markets? Because NEI Global has, I think, arguably more offices throughout the lower 48 in the United States than any of the publicly traded firms, well north of 100. Are there any markets that you think are underserved that NEI members in those markets could maybe get more involved and you could all do a little bit better?
There's not a lot of new build activity. The new build activity that's occurring is going to be in Montana and those rural areas, in the West. There's so many sites already that if brokers just look around, there's sell leases all over the place. If you drill down there's an antanasearch.com and you type in an address, you can see all of the towers or FCC licenses within a 3-mile radius. We are already oversaturated with sell leases. And so there's a lot of opportunities for brokers to reach out and build income through a wireless expert like ourselves, where they hand off their client over to us. We assist them with the sell lease, and then they can assist them with all of their commercial real estate needs per se.
Okay, very good. All right, well, that's good on the business side. That I'm sure listeners now are up to speed on what the wireless branch of NEI Global can do and can do for them. Let's talk a little bit about you. You're part of our Next Generation series of guests on the podcast. You're a younger woman, younger professional. You're also the chair, we should mention, of the NEI Global Women's Alliance Council. And I believe you won some sort of award when we were together last February at convention. Maybe you can check your modesty at the door, Amber, and tell us what that award was.
That was just the Women's Alliance Award. It was the first award given, and I'm extremely honored to have received that. I really believe coming together with women in commercial real estate and collaborating and creating those relationships is crucial in our industry. So a little bit about the Women's Alliance Council. Women's Alliance allows for women of NEI to come together to celebrate one another while collaborating and driving commercial real estate business worldwide. Forming relationships throughout the network allows us to service our clients when their need exceeds their territory. So we created a small teams list where everybody said what market they work in and what industry they specialize in. And when they have a client, say if you're in Phoenix and you have a client looking for New Jersey, you can pull up this small teams list and refer that business out. So we can at least keep it within the network.
That's excellent, and as it should be. We're all working together, hopefully rowing the boat in the same direction to be a more inclusive industry. Obviously, well represented by predominantly men and predominantly Caucasian men. So it's great that you're involved. And the Alliance is I think I wrote the press release when it was launched 3 years ago. I've seen it make its own progress. I recall earlier this year we did a little bit of a recap of some of the amazing accomplishments so many of you are doing. And so it's a good group. And for women within NEI Global that are listening, if you're not familiar with it, contact Amber. We'll provide her contact information at the end of the podcast, or the corporate office, certainly membership services, or the help desk at NEI Global. It's a great group and you should be involved if you're a woman. Amber, you also recently were traveling back east. Speaking of women's group, I believe you went to the CREi conference in Atlanta, and then from there you moved on to a fairly newish group that's mixed gender. It's called Commercial Real Estate Influencers. Tell us about your travels in the past month, because those are two separate things but related. And I think you were there for your own purposes, but I think you were also NEI Global's representative at both.
Yeah, so the CREi convention was in Atlanta, and there were approximately 1,700 attendees, but it felt like a lot more. It was a lot of females.
1,700?
1,700, yeah. It was crazy. You'd walk into the main hall where all the main speakers are, and it's just so many people in one room. It's amazing. And it's a fun story. So I joined CREi last year in 2022. I immediately reached out to all the C-suite women, so CEOs, COOs of these companies, and I asked for a short call so I could soft pitch them about our company and how I could service their clients. I had over 30 calls, and I set up 8 in-person meetings at last year's CREi convention. And one of those calls turned into a client that we're currently bidding out their cell lease for. And I was just amazed I was told several times that if it wasn't for me being a member of CREi, I wouldn't get past the gatekeeper. They wouldn't pick up the phone. So just being a member of CREi, I always advise any woman in commercial real estate to really consider joining their local chapter because of the networking and the opportunities that can come from CREi. But the CREi convention in Atlanta was great. After that, I had a little downtime. I went to NEI South Coast down in Stuart, Florida, and saw Jennifer Trent and got to see her office. And then I zipped on up to Orlando where the CREi Summit was, and that was my first year attending. And the CREi Summit is all social media and self-branding. And they do workshops on the different platforms, social media platforms. So LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and just how you can elevate that presence. And there was one lady there who was amazing. She has 1 million TikTok followers, and all she does is warehouses. And it was just amazing to hear all of these stories. But the attendees for the CREi summit was anybody in any brokers in all of the companies. We're talking JLL, Colliers, NEI. There was a few members of NEI there. We actually sponsored, I believe, the welcome dinner for that evening. For me, CREi was extremely fun, and I learned a lot from that. And there was a speaker called Rod. I always mess up his last name, but he's with the Massimo Group, and he was talking. Yes,
Rod Santomassimo.
yes, and he did a presentation on AI, and we all walked out of that session and thinking, this is crazy. Like the future of AI and what it's going to do to our industry, it's just phenomenal. So I took a lot away from the CREi summit, that's for sure.
Oh, they're both awesome experiences, and the crew thing in particular, I'm really particularly impressed that many of us kind of join a quote network and we warm up to it and ease into it. You jumped right in and said, I'm here to generate some business and some revenue. Thanks for the glass of Chardonnay or whatever. Let's talk about business. So good for you, Amber. That's as it should be. I love that. And then I am familiar with the commercial real estate influencer event. It's I think it's its second or third year in its evolution. The subject of AI is one that's ever present. Sounds like you've had some good experience in the recent months. Well, why don't we get back to, because I know your story, but listeners predominantly don't. You had an interesting path to your career in real estate. And as we approach kind of the 20-minute mark, I also want you to be thinking, what would you tell a young woman that you met today about career opportunities in commercial real estate? Your version of it is really well defined, somewhat narrow. You know the brokerage world pretty well by now. But so there's two questions. Again, how'd you get into the business, and what would you tell a young woman that didn't know what she wanted to be when she grew up and you had a chance to speak with her?
I will address my story first. I grew up in a very small gold mining town in Round Mountain, Nevada, and I graduated with a class of 33, and 7 of those were female. When I graduated a year early, and I moved straight to Southern California. I couldn't get out fast enough. And I started in retail and waitressing. And I did that for several years, doing 2 to 3 jobs a day. I mean, I had several jobs at one time. I eventually moved to Redlands, and I became a manager of Anytime Fitness. And David Moore was a member of mine, and he came in every single day at 5 o'clock. And after his workout, he would come sit with us and we would chit chat. And so we built a friendship, and eventually I started dog and house sitting for him. And over a couple of years, we just became friends. So in 2013, I really was considering moving to Tennessee. And he sat me down and said, "That's a terrible idea. I want you to come work for me." And I said, "David, I don't know anything about real estate, especially cell phones and telecom, and I didn't know anything about it. And I have no college background, so I don't really know if I would be a good fit." And he said, "I will teach you everything. Just come work for me." And so I started at a 10% commission at that point. And he just handed me all sorts of leases, and I just started reading and analyzing sell lease agreements with all the different carriers and tower companies and whatnot. And I got very familiar and started interacting with clients and handling that transactional side. And after a couple of years, and as these years went by, my commission structure changed, right? I was getting a piece by piece as I continued the education and learning more. Well, I believe in 2019, we started discussing possibly branching off and launching our own firm. And so we went to Jay and he gave us his blessing, and we launched NEI Global Wireless in January of 2021, where me and David are 50-50 partners. So, I mean, I started from nothing, and I really was determined and really wanted to succeed and create a career for myself. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. So here I am.
Well, it's a heck of a journey. Congratulations. For listeners, to clarify, David Moore was with NEI Capital, I believe, in the Interior Inland Empire office in Southern California. So David was already very well familiar with the value of NEI Global and the whole NEI proposition of the platform itself. So that's that. But then to you, Amber, one of the things that I really thought about listening is you developed, I think, one of the most important qualities that we all have in these types of jobs, which is your communication skills in a service forward way, whether it's food serving or retail, or management of a fitness facility is retail as well. So it's very people oriented. So I'm not surprised that you've done well, for example, picking up the phone and calling 30 different COOs and CFOs and CEOs of real estate companies that are led by women and saying, hey, can I meet? So that comes from that experience. But here you are 10 years later. It's quite a journey. So I gave you enough time to think about what would you tell a young woman interested in perhaps a career in real estate. Doesn't have to be a perfect answer, because there really isn't one. But what might you offer this young person by way of advice to explore further or get things going?
Yeah, I think anybody coming into the industry, not only females, is to find a mentor. Find somebody that is going to invest in you and be willing to give you their time as much as you're willing to put into the business as well. Without David, I would not be where I'm at today. He has been a great mentor, and I truly believe that mentors are a huge key to young professional success. And they just have so much knowledge and information that you can gain from them if you just sit down and listen. So I think that's one of the main things for me.
Well, I don't think you'd find any argument there. It's often a common refrain, mentorship, but you have to be willing to be menteed as well. But just for other things to throw it out is, and I'm a more senior person, and everyone will say it, including Jay Oshansky, who's the CEO of NEI Global, of course, is one of the values we get out of mentoring younger people is we get mentored as well. We might be older, but we don't know everything, and we sure don't know a lot about the way things operate or the way younger people think. So you guys help us too. So, well, Amber, you've been a wonderful guest. I think a lot of your comments were very insightful. Again, this has been Amber Brandhagen with NEI Global Wireless. Amber, why don't you leave us with a good phone number that you can leave listeners to call you if they've got an opportunity when they want to talk to you about?
Yeah, absolutely. My cell phone number is 760-902-9592.
Excellent. Amber, thanks again. Signing off for now.
All right. Thanks, Gary.
Thanks for tuning in to How's Biz, presented by NAI Global. Review, share, subscribe, and keep an eye out for the next episode.